and welcome to Inspired Leadership, a podcast where we speak with changemakers and heads of HR about all the things happening on the landscape. I'm Jaime Klein, founder and CEO of Inspire HR. For those of you who don't know us, we do all things HR. We are one of the first movers in fractional and always have the pleasure of diving into companies doing everything from HR business partner work to change management to org effectiveness, comp ben, technology. And we are thrilled to have with us today someone that I've always admired, Renee Ross, who's a longtime colleague and friend. Renee has joined us. She's the former CHRO of ITE Management and has held leadership roles at organizations you might have heard of, including Estee Lauder, American Express, MSCI, and Deloitte. And she's someone that I've always admired. She has such a holistic approach to all things that she tackles, and just thrilled to have this conversation. Renee, welcome.
Thank you, Jaime, for that lovely introduction. And I'm so pleased to join you for this conversation.
Oh my gosh, you and I were speaking a few months back about just the whole democratization of talent and the rise of AI. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've got to sit down because you had great insights. And I know that the folks in our community could really benefit to hear. So much to cover. So we'll dive right in. So just to kind of set the table, I'd love to kind of start with kind of, here we are, it's Q1 2026. We're in this very unique moment, especially with, for a lot of organizations, kind of the whole talent season just wrapping up. I'd love to get your sense, if you can just kind of give us the landscape. How is kind of career growth changing? It used to kind of depend on who you knew and who you had access to. And with the rise of AI, the whole game has changed, and employees are finding opportunities in all new ways without knowing, quote unquote, that gatekeeper. What kind of trends are you seeing?
So you're right. Historically, career growth depended heavily on visibility and access. Who you knew, who sponsored you, who opened doors for you. What's exciting about AI is that has the potential to make opportunity far more transparent. At the same time, technology alone doesn't unlock human potential.
Uh-huh.
That real transformation happens when organizations combine intelligent tools with cultures where people feel safe to grow, experiment, and contribute their ideas. That intersection of technology and human trust is where the future of work is really being shaped. And
Mm-hmm.
so, when you think about it, there are two lenses to consider. First, how an employee seeks opportunities internally with respect to
Mm-hmm.
their respective organizations. And second, how they explore opportunities externally.
Mm-hmm.
And while we don't always want to admit it, employees are often doing both. They're exploring both in
Yes,
parallel.
yes.
And, the expectations for greater transparency has only increased as data and insights externally are
Uh-huh.
feeding internally and vice versa. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about it, maybe let's start with the internal experience.
Yeah, what is it like on the inside? Yes.
So, AI is dramatically changing how employees discover opportunities inside organizations. Traditionally, advancement internally often depended on your network. And, today AI powered talent platforms, if organizations have it. And when I worked at ELC, we had deployed one internally. AI powered talent platforms can analyze employee skills,
Mm-hmm.
experience, their interests and career goals to proactively surface opportunities they might never have known existed. And at the same time, can generate talent profiles that leaders may not have previously considered because of unique skills or a combination of skill sets in an employee's profile.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of waiting for a manager or sponsor to open a door, employees
Yeah.
can explore projects, roles, or learning paths that align with their skills and capabilities. AI can recommend stretch assignments, mentorship matches, or cross functional work based on skill adjacencies, and vice versa for leaders seeking talent for their roles and assignments.
When you talk about AI powered portal, I'm assuming, was that something that was kind of homegrown that you created, that the tech team built internally?
Oh gosh, no. We outsourced that. So
Okay.
we did a whole RFP on it, and there are lots of great external providers that have that technology with their AI algorithms
Great.
that we then honed for our own organization. So it's
Okay.
really important that you think about the specific rules and rules of
Mm-hmm.
engagement for your
Mm-hmm.
organization, what
Mm-hmm.
data privacy is going to be important for your
Mm-hmm.
organization, etc. because
Okay.
it's trained on your individual needs for your organization.
Okay. And so you procure this system, you customize it, and then how does behind the scenes, how does the process work? Does it get information on the internal talent that you have by looking at the resume that they might have uploaded when they came through the applicant tracking system or through looking at past performance reviews? How does it call that data?
It's a combination. So it depends on what you decide as a company. You can pull the information from LinkedIn. You
Huh.
can pull the information from the applicant tracking system if you have one.
Okay.
So when a person first joins the organization. And it can also be from the profile that an employer creates. So an employee can then say, let me pull all of this information. I can pull in my LinkedIn profile. I can pull in a resume that I create.
Okay.
And then I can also then add skills as I go along. So as I learn new skills, I can pull that in as I take on a learning program or do something on LinkedIn
Yeah.
learning or whatever learning platform that
Yes.
you have in the organization.
Yes.
Those skills can be pulled into the technology and upload the new skills that I've learned as I go along.
Huh.
So it's very dynamic
Yes.
and real time.
And are employees kind of given a prompt from time to time to go ahead and upload this information?
It depends on what you
Okay.
coded into the system. If you
Okay.
want to remind employees to do that, if you want to do an engagement a program and a communication program, reminding employees to do that on a regular basis, you want to give them a nudge. You can do that. You can bake that into your Microsoft if you use Microsoft Exchange
Sure.
or
Yeah.
tools or Teams. You can do that as part of your communications campaign to remind folks to update their skills. What's more important is if it's embedded in the workflow
Hmm.
with your employees, and it's important to their thinking about their career and career conversations with their
Hmm.
leaders,
Hmm.
then they're incentivized, if you will,
Uh-huh.
to
Yeah.
update their profile on a regular basis. They're going into the system on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and they're making those adjustments on a regular basis. So, I'm thinking about having a career conversation with my leader. So before I do that, I'm going to go update my profile. I'm going to take that in
Mm,
to have the conversation with my leader. My leader is going in, thinking about that, and preparing for the conversation with me, and bringing that to the table with me in the conversation. So it really has to be
yeah.
part of the normal course of business
Hmm.
for it to be kept up to date.
I love this. It feels so just in time. And I think that we as humans are kind of, most of us are lifelong learners. And for many of us, we will stay in an organization to the extent that we feel that we're learning and growing. And if not, it's easier to kind of, get distracted by the call that you get or the the text
Right.
you get from someone who, an old friend who's hiring. And so to think that, wow, I'm at an organization that's that kind of current and modern is always looking for new ways for me to have multiple careers within the organization. I love. I also love the pulling from LinkedIn because let's keep it real. It is so hard for your leader to get to know all of your experiences, all the industries you've worked in, all the
Right.
stretch projects that you've done, and to kind of know that they have a jewel inside the organization who's done all the things. It's always better to promote from within. So that is fantastic. I'm thinking that it must have been a great retention tool for you to kind of tell employees that you care that much, that you're taking that time. Did you have good results of folks participating and uploading their profiles on a regular basis?
Good results. We had more than 50% of our employees, it was close to 65%, if I remember correctly, uploading their profiles into the
Huh.
system for our corporate employees. That was the initial rollout that we did was for all of our corporate employees globally,
Okay.
which was high relative to industry
Yes.
benchmark for the
Yes.
initial rollout, and actively engaged in the system as well, which was
That's
great.
fantastic.
Um,
Yeah.
what we really needed to do was have a active engagement. We also needed to have active movement of roles of people
Mm,
applying for active roles in the organization. We also needed to have people working through not just applying for jobs, but also mentorships and networking. right? Because as you know, it's not just about, what role do I get, but it's also about making connections in the
Of course.
organization,
Of course.
to share skills and share knowledge and mentorship throughout the organization, because
Hmm.
that's how we learn and grow in the organization. And then
Hmm.
we also think about gigs, so short-term assignments.
Hmm.
That was also a really big unlock for the organization.
Hmm.
Taking on short-term assignments while you
Hmm.
might be slow on this project
Yeah,
in your current role, taking on short-term or stretch assignments was also a huge unlock for us. And that's where we saw a lot of initial growth in our initial rollout.
tremendous. I love it. And this is great. This feels like best in class. And I just love all these details and examples because it gives folks who are listening kind of energy to think about how they could create something like that internally. I wanted to next kind of shift to this whole world of on-demand coaching. I'm seeing so many vendors kind of pop up that are offering this, and I'd imagine that with AI, it's a tool that that employees can really, again, use to kind of level the playing field, right? It's not just that the high potentials or the VP plus are getting coaches, but it's kind of this great democratization of coaching. How have you seen that play out?
I think we're closer than we've ever been in sort of democratizing coaching because of the technology that's available. So
Mm.
in the past, coaching and career guidance were privileges reserved for
Uh-huh.
executives or high potential employees. And AI is changing that dynamic by making personalized development tools affordable and accessible for
Mm.
pretty much all employees. If you
Mm.
use ChatGPT, you ask a question, they
Yes.
can come, it can kind of come back, or whatever AI tool that you're using, you can come back
Yeah.
with some pretty good, I'm
Yes.
putting quotation marks advice, right, to help you
Yeah.
through some of the things that you need to work through.
Hmm.
And this represents a significant shift from traditional coaching models that were limited to select individuals.
Uh-huh.
AI is more scalable, so they can provide it, can afford to provide it to lots and lots of employees.
Hmm.
It's real-time, personalized support. These platforms analyze digital behaviors that provide real-time, personalized insights and
Mm.
recommendations for improvement. You sort of
Mm.
form as a microcoach. So you see a lot of them
Uh-huh.
embedding it into your emails, and kind of seeing how you react to things in your communication styles.
Uh-huh.
And then they can give you real-time feedback so you can improve in your communication as you're typing your emails, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you shouldn't say this. Maybe you should say this would be nice, be a better way to influence the person that you're communicating with,
Uh-huh.
so that you can have real sustained behavior. So the next time you do it, you'll do it differently. And then
Right.
it's a continuous feedback loop, right? It facilitates sort of that sustainable behavior change. But I don't think it's going to replace humans, right? It can provide the
Sure.
data and insights, but it cannot
Yes.
fully replicate human empathy, intuition, and sort of the nuanced understanding that
Sure.
human beings, you and I as
Yes.
coaches, bring to complex interpersonal situations.
Yes.
Human coaches and AI based coaches have different strengths
Hmm.
and support leadership development in different ways. I
Hmm.
do think they are complementary.
Uh-huh.
So, from a scaling perspective, I think the most successful approach appears to be combining the two.
Okay.
Using AI for scalability, real-time feedback, and data-driven insights,
Yep.
while maintaining human coaching for complex emotional intelligence, strategic
Hmm.
thinking, and
Hmm.
relationship building. So, for example, some of the things that we tested in some organizations I work for is having the AI component as the framework and backdrop, real time, as part of the program, combined with the human element. So you still had one-on-one coaching, or for to scale it, we may have group coaching, and we have fewer one-on-one coaching sessions that are augmented
Okay.
by AI. So that's a way to think about scaling the human component
Okay.
with the platform and the foundation being AI-driven coaching and data and insights. So I
Okay.
think I think the future is a sort of a human AI component,
Yeah.
um, uh, and that's the future. And we have to really start thinking about, okay, we have AI that really democratizes it, but how do we
Hmm.
start thinking about, in collaboration with AI, how do we start really
Hmm.
scaling the human component so we can
Hmm.
reach more and more people?
I love this. So it sounds like it's a mashup of the two. So let's
It's
say
a
that I'm
total
in,
mashup of the two.
right. So I'm in Microsoft. I'm, drafting an email and I can bring up Copilot and say, please give me tips on how to polish this to have it sound more refined, or remember the audience, I'm really speaking to someone quite senior, and it can kind of come back with those tips real time. But then on top of that, I'd imagine getting, and I love group coaching, huge fan of that. We do it all the time, really getting several employees together to talk about how they have aspirations for moving into more senior roles and how to kind of present themselves in front of more senior leaders, not just the written, but also kind of how to hold themselves in a room, especially for many of our newer early career folks who might have kind of gotten hired and begun their careers virtually
Right.
during the pandemic. And now they have to kind of be in rooms with executives without kind of having seen all that role modeling happen. So that's why we tend to be on speed dial for group coaching, is kind of these early career folks who need the zhuzh, like they need to be quickly elevated. And so what I'm hearing is there isn't a specific app or tool that you have invested in to give real-time coaching. It's just truly in whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever the employee is using on the daily basis.
There's so many apps out there, but there are also lots of coaching mashups of
Mm-hmm.
programs like BetterUp. We looked at a ton of traditional coaching programs that are embedding AI into their
Mm-hmm.
tools and frameworks that offer the combination that I just talked about
Uh-huh.
and are really savvy. And I'll give you the example of BetterUp as
Please.
an example. We spent a lot of time looking
Oh,
at them,
love
and
Better Up.
they
Yes.
offer multiple layers of coaching as well. What they have done is combine reams and reams and reams of deep data and analytics and research into their core component of coaching,
Mm-hmm.
coupled with one-on-one coaching or group coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're looking for is that combination, not just
Okay.
a standalone tool.
Okay.
Right? And that's the basis that you're thinking about. If you're implementing something on your own, it's really thinking through what's the training data? What outcome are you trying to provide or encourage you to talk to your human person, whether that be
Mm-hmm.
your HR business partner, your leader, right? I
Mm-hmm.
now need you to go speak to your leader about this particular issue
Uh-huh.
because AI is not enough.
Sure.
Right? Right? It's going to do what you've trained it to do,
Uh-huh.
and that's it. And then you need to speak to someone with human judgment. It
Yes.
doesn't replace human judgment, and so you have to really understand when you want it to go to
Mm-hmm.
your HR partner, to your
Mm-hmm.
manager, etc., or to your coach, right, for that additional layer of judgment and advice.
It's great. So it sounds like there's a whole buffet of options. It's the better ups, the kind of coaching where they kind of build in the AI, and then also for maybe more junior roles or organizations with a leaner budget, utilizing the co-pilot, whatever it might be, to kind of ride along with an employee, periodically, and kind of help it come across stronger in written
And
communication.
go into your own infrastructure, right?
Yes,
The traditional infrastructure, it's not just, self-help, right?
sure.
You're also leveraging the people in your organization who are intended to coach
Yes,
on a regular basis your employees through their leadership development, right?
yeah,
Your leader, your manager, you go to your direct manager, you go to your HR person, you go to your peers in some cases, right, for
yeah.
that assistance.
It's great. And when we think of all the layers of technology that are impacting all the different parts of talent development, the recruiting and the promotion and the succession planning, I'm visualizing more of a kind of jungle gym or lattice than the traditional career ladder that maybe you and I would have seen when we started our careers. Can you speak to that a little bit of kind of what you're seeing in terms of career pathing with all this tech available?
So, even before the technology was available, I do think the traditional ladder is becoming less and less relevant in
Mm-hmm.
modern organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw it as we in our careers where we stayed with one traditional company, we stayed there forever,
Uh-huh.
and
Yes.
now people, in our day, people start to move around quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit. And so I think careers are increasingly multi-directional rather than strictly upward.
Mm-hmm.
And AI
Mm-hmm.
is simply accelerating that shift by making it
Mm-hmm.
easier for employees to see
Mm-hmm.
lateral opportunities that build new skills and
Mm-hmm.
capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of climbing rung by rung, employees can move across the organization to develop broader skill sets. And it really is
Uh-huh.
skill based. So they can move from marketing to product, product to operations and
Mm-hmm.
so forth.
Okay.
And these experiences actually, in my opinion, create stronger leaders because they
Mm-hmm.
build context,
Mm-hmm.
and they build, adaptability. And
Mm-hmm.
adaptability and agility is really critical in
There's
this ever-changing,
Yes.
volatile environment. So,
Yes.
I think of it as it's a lattice of opportunities, but it's also a lattice and a network of skills
Hmm.
in multiple directions that
Hmm.
create a portfolio for you that you can kind
Hmm.
of take and port with you, um, and prepares you for this ever-changing world. And I
Hmm.
think that's very
Hmm.
valuable for the employee, but it's very, very valuable for the organization because the
Hmm.
role, when you think about it in the past, you're preparing for the specific role. Well, that role may not exist
Hmm.
2 or 3 years from now. We can
Uh-huh.
see that with AI, right? Computer programming
Absolutely. Oh
that's
my
completely
gosh.
changing, right
Absolutely.
under our feet. So you
Yeah.
want to prepare for the roles of the future that we don't know what that is.
Hmm.
And this AI really kind of helps you, or technology really helps you think about it from a skill perspective as
Hmm.
opposed to simply a job or a role perspective.
I love that. I love that lens of just the skill perspective and, and the gathering and accumulation of skills.
Yes.
I do have to ask two tough questions are coming to mind, and this is the other flip side, just to be balanced. How do we ensure that AI algorithmic bias is not replacing the historic human
Yeah.
bias that we've experienced? I know that this is an area that you and I are very passionate of making sure that doors are opened and traditional barriers come down. What
Mhm.
have you seen, and just any tips?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this is one of the most important responsibilities organizations have, when deploying AI in talent systems. Algorithms learn from historic data, and if that data reflects past biases, then the technology can, unintentionally reinforce them.
Mhm.
And I think this is a multi-layered approach that requires constant vigilance and care.
Mhm.
First, you really have to think about it intentionally when you design fairness from the start. I talked about us, one of my former companies, designing and implementing the internal talent marketplace. So that's something we have to really think about
Mhm.
before we're implementing it and not just take their technology and plump it into our organization. So you
Mhm.
think about that ahead of time. Then you really have to continuously monitor it for adverse impacts. So doing a lot of auditing,
Mhm.
testing
Okay.
on a regular basis.
Okay.
You want to make sure you have diverse, high quality training data. You want to have complete transparency about how the AI is being used and communicate that with leaders, with employees, etc. And then remember, human oversight.
Mhm.
you know, AI is not intended to replace human decision making,
Mhm.
and accountability.
Mhm.
It's there to help. The goal is not to remove humans from the loop, but to use AI as a tool that helps
Mhm.
uh, humans make more equitable
Mhm.
decisions than we
Yep.
have. So we have to be super clear about where AI is helping and where humans are making decisions. And then finally, I would say strong governance for
Mm.
data and ethical use of AI and
Mhm.
how well that's working
Mhm.
in the organization, and communicate all of those things clearly and often.
Mhm.
People are coming in, people are exiting, things are changing constantly. There's lots in the news about AI. So you have to be able to talk about that regularly and what you're doing, how you're doing
Mhm.
it on a regular basis. So the goal is not to eliminate human judgment. It's to use AI to enhance human decision
Mhm.
making while actively working to prevent both human and algorithmic bias from influencing
Mhm.
critical decisions.
It,
Remember, we're still human and we still make mistakes,
heck
right?
yes.
And we're still vulnerable to that. So
Mhm.
we have to be monitoring our decision making
Mhm.
process just as much as what we're putting into the system as
Mhm.
it's working on its algorithms.
And I love that you mentioned the governance whenever we advise companies on just kind of where the heck do they even begin? We always talk about create a task force, get some folks around the table, legal, HR, tech, et cetera, that all have
Correct.
various lenses, and make sure that the governance is in place. You're constantly going back to that. And I think in the US, what we're finding is that it is a little bit of the Wild West right now. And many times states have their own rules. And I'm always looking to our colleagues in Europe because they are years ahead of us in terms of ensuring that that governance is in place from the jump. A lot of
Correct.
organizations have just kind of gone into like lab testing mode before having that in place. So with all of this, how do we
No,
kind
people
of get
often think governance is there to slow you down, but if you're not thinking about what governance is important for your organization,
Mhm.
you're going to make mistakes that you're not going to be able to decouple later. So put
Right.
the right governance in place, put the right checks and balances in place now. That framework is going to be important for your employees and for trust. I mean,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, this is going to be about trust between you, your employees. A lot of this is not just about employees. You're using AI for your consumers as well.
Oh, yes.
So that's the foundation of it. We're all experimenting, we're all learning. The mistakes are going to happen, but if you don't are not able to articulate that and have governance and checks and balances, you're not going to catch it early enough. You're not going to be able to course correct. You're not going to be able to communicate it
Mhm.
effectively. So
Well
have the
said.
governance in place so that you can manage those things, monitor it, and be able to address those things early and communicate those things effectively to avoid losing that trust,
Hmm.
which we all know has negative effects
Oh, yes.
down the line.
Yes. And I often think of our employees as consumers of the employee experience. Like we're out there, shopping at Home Depot and Target, wherever, and we're consumers of these businesses. In the last 2 months, Renee, I have received so many like pop-ups and notifications, and we've updated our privacy laws from more organizations. And I even got an email just from Google Workplace. Some part of Google emailed me just yesterday saying, we've updated our privacy. Please check this link and just check off the things you're comfortable with. And I remember going to bed the other night thinking, right, they too are having to constantly evolve because probably there was some issue where something got raised and they have to kind of go back to the drawing board. And then what they need to do is go back to all the folks, all their consumers, and have
Mm-hmm.
them kind of revalidate kind of how from time to time we might need as employers to go back to our employees from time to time and just have them check in again about what information they've shared. Um, you remember the first time you ever went on a website and had you like approve cookies? I was like, what is this cookie thing? And now I'm
This
just
is
in the
cookie
habit.
up every
Right,
single time.
exactly. And now I'm personally in the habit. I just kind of always click reject or like only, provide bare information. I'm just building that muscle to slow the heck down and start indicating that I don't want that. And I would imagine as employers, as we start to leverage these tools, right? Let's create an internal database and bring in information from LinkedIn. There might be a moment where our governance team needs to revisit, okay, what is the approval that we want to ask our employees for just from time to time, because the goalposts are going to keep on changing with how much data we're getting and how much people are not going to want to share. So big picture, how do we balance all of this? I don't know if you've seen it done beautifully or if you have examples of it not being done well, but I just would love any tips you have for folks. So like, how do you balance all this transparency, in career pathing with kind of the balancing it with the right to privacy and their own development? Any just general pro tips on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core challenge is that AI-powered career development systems need employee data to create transparency on opportunities. Yet
Yeah.
employees have legitimate privacy concerns about how that data is collected, used, and shared. So, this creates a tension between making career paths visible and accessible
Sure.
while respecting individual tension between, between individual privacy rights.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, trust is going to be the foundation. And so I think organizations really need to clearly communicate the rules of engagement, what data is used, how it's protected, how it benefits employees, and creating that psychological safety needed for teams to
Mm-hmm.
embrace that transformation and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to speak up, right, when they don't want that data to be used.
Absolutely.
I found when we were rolling out deploying this, we really followed the letter of the law to the T, and we
Mm.
took a conservative approach. At least in my former organization, we took the conservative approach. If we thought we were going to be in trouble, we kind of erred toward, okay, we're not going to take that risk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for us, it was a little bit more about the cultural nuances as opposed to the legal nuances because
Mm.
we were on the conservative side. And it
Mm-hmm.
really was more about what do I divulge to my manager before I'm ready to. This
Uh-huh.
was the more common pieces. So employees might privately want to explore potential moves in their
Mm-hmm.
career or skills they want to develop.
Mm-hmm.
But when do I tell my leader that I'm going to
Right.
do it?
Right.
That really was the concern. It was less
Mm-hmm.
about what private data am I sharing. It's more
Mm-hmm.
about I want to look at this stretch assignment or I want to look at this new job opportunity, but I really am not ready to tell my manager that I'm looking.
Mm-hmm.
When do I involve him or her in that
Hmm.
process? How do I have that conversation?
Hmm.
What are the rules around that? How long do I have to stay in this job before I can start looking for something else? How
Hmm.
does that negatively reflect on me
Hmm.
that I'm looking for something else?
Sure.
And that is less about the technology and a lot more about the culture
Sure.
and feeling psychologically safe in the culture that, we can have those conversations freely and that
Hmm.
we're encouraging people to move in the organization, that they're
Right.
not going to be retaliated because they're looking, that we want people to have more of those open conversations
Yes.
and discussions, that managers are encouraging that with each other as well as with people on their team, and that we're having
Yes.
open, career conversations and dialogue without
Yes.
feeling like they're losing talent because they're also having those conversations with other people in parts of the organization who can then come in and they have a great talent pipeline coming into the organization. So
Yes.
building that muscle in the organization is
Hmm.
really critical
Hmm.
in
And
parallel to providing this technology.
yeah,
Um, and thinking through that is a huge change management effort.
massive. And I love that you brought up psychological safety. And this is a topic that's been talked about constantly. Like at the end of the day, humans work better when they don't feel that they need to be in fight, flight, right, or freeze, right? So I think and you and I had the pleasure of, being at American Express early in our careers, which was best in class. And the culture there was, of course, every 2 years, you're going to look around, you're going to think,
That's
is there
right.
another way that I can contribute or grow? And if you weren't, it was a little bit like, is everything okay that you're not thinking of striving for something else, even if it's a
You start
lateral?
talking about what's next. Yeah. You might
Exactly.
move after 18 months or 2 years, but you're already starting to think about, okay,
Exactly.
how am I building toward the next thing?
And you better believe that employees are happy to look outside the organization if they don't feel that they can grow inside. And as I said, folks are going to stay as long as they feel like they can kind of, keep on stretching themselves inside.
So easy to look outside today. I mean,
Oh,
it's
boy, is it.
that's right.
Boy, is it. Yes. And also with folks working from home, or what I've heard from employers, we have, these hybrid moments where people can work from home and they can very easily. And, remember the old days, like if you came to work in a suit, people thought you either like going to a funeral or like the opera in the
The job
evening.
interview.
You better believe, or the job interview. And now you can just, like you can fit those things in. So I think that more than ever, we have to make people feel like it's really the organization is a place they want to call home for a while. I'd love to kind of switch gears to this whole notion of psychological safety because this is a whole other piece of the puzzles. Like, how do you create these cultures where leaders can kind of show up themselves and be authentic and kind of share their own challenges, their own things that kind of keep them up at night? And the goal is that they can just find a way to be more human so that their employees feel like they themselves can be human and flawed at times and not always so shiny and be more real. And the hope is to, if we create these cultures that you can really retain people more. And I'm just curious, I think during the pandemic, there was this moment where everyone was like, bring your whole self to work. And then it kind of
Right.
shifted post pandemic to like, well, don't bring maybe like your whole self to work, maybe have it be more like your best self to work. So what are you kind of seeing now in terms of the way, because during the pandemic, the leaders that were so straight up honest, I think were the ones that everyone wanted to work for because it was a time of such vulnerability. And I think that there's a carryover where I'm still seeing that the best leaders still attract and retain the top employees. But I'm wondering what you're seeing, how that's playing out. Here we are in Q1 of 2026. What trends are you seeing?
I do still think that authenticity from leaders is important and critical. I think it creates permission for everyone else to be as real. So it's interesting you talk
Mm-hmm.
about, bring your full self to work or bring your best self to work. I think for me, it's about bringing your authentic self to work.
Hmm.
It's about for me, and I don't know, I don't know about the full trends, if you will. I can speak personally, and I can also speak to what I've seen work.
Yeah, please.
Um, and what I've seen from engagement scores and things like that from a data perspective. When leaders openly discuss challenges, failures, and what they're learning from it, it signals growth in my perspective, not perfection, right?
Mhm.
And it signals to other people that that's the expectation. So for
Uh-huh.
top talent, that, in my opinion, that matters deeply. And that's why people want to
Right.
work for people like that who are honest and open. High performers want environments where they can take risks, speak candidly, and continue
Mm-hmm.
developing without fear of damaging their reputation or fear of retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
Authentic leaders build trust, and trust is one of the most, is one of the strongest predictors of retention.
Mm-hmm.
And employees stay where they feel respected and valued,
Mm-hmm.
understood, and supported.
Mm-hmm.
And when leaders model that vulnerability, it humanizes the organization and quite frankly strengthens that bond. So that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think you know authenticity and is important, an important element for a leader to
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate, and
Mm-hmm.
and that comes across based on who that leader is, right?
Uh-huh.
And how
Yes.
they convey that is important, but at the core of it is showing some vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
when you make a mistake, or showing that you don't know it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Essentially, right? I
Yeah.
don't have all the answers. I'm not the ultimate expert in the room on all things
Uh-huh.
just because I'm in this leadership position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that there was a time where creating that sense of psychological safety, it was seen as like just being nice or being soft, right? Really being
Right.
someone that would let people honestly, like, only have 10 vacation days, but maybe they would just let them take 12, like,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And now I'm just curious if you're seeing it more as that retention tool, like this is where the high performers want to be. This is who they want to work for. This is who they want to kind of strive and kind of overwork for. Are you seeing that still show up, or do you think it's still kind of seen as being nice? Because I'm just curious, because the pandemic kind of switched all the rules a bit.
Well, so I don't think of psychological safety as a soft term or being nice, right? I think it's often misunderstood as that.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, I think it's a performance accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Teams with psychological safety are more willing to challenge assumptions, admit
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, surface problems
Mm-hmm.
earlier. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's places where you have radical candor.
Yes,
People
yes,
are
yes.
speaking, feel safe speaking up. They're doing it in
Mm-hmm.
a respectful and productive way,
Sure,
as Amy Edmondson would say.
sure.
But these are environments where I see something see something, say something kind of environments,
Right,
but
right.
you're avoiding costly blind spots.
Yes.
This is a place where innovation increases because people are comfortable proposing bold or
Mm-hmm.
unconventional ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think psychological safety is about avoiding tough conversations at all, right?
Okay.
It's about creating an environment where tough conversations can happen in a productive way.
Mm-hmm.
And the data consistently shows that highest performing teams combine high standards with high safety, not the
Mm-hmm.
reverse, right? If
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I'm saying let's be nice and lower the standards and
Right.
kumbaya. That's not the situation at all. I expect high standards. I expect tough conversations, but you
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable coming to me with like, hey, Renee, I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing something. It's really tough. We have to address it. And you're comfortable with me challenging you on that because you feel
Mm-hmm.
safe.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not going to then hold something against you because
Mm-hmm.
of that conversation, or I'm not going to put you down because of that conversation, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that with AI providing us every tool in the world, I think that leaders can feel similar, employees can feel similar, right? Who knows who's co-piloting and judging up every email, every decision, right? But the leaders
Correct.
that make you feel safe, that make you feel like you can be your authentic self. I love that term. Those are the ones that are going to stand out, not just this, just not all the tips and tricks of how to be a good leader that they're getting from AI, how to handle various things, but the folks who really take the time to care. I love
Correct.
your perspective on all the things. And I thank you so much. And I always love to finish with, in this day and age of, there's a lot going on out there. What are you doing for self-care? We're self-care obsessed here at Inspire. So I just am curious, with all that you do, what fuels you? What do you do to recharge?
Wow. So, recharge. So I really love. I'll break it up into two things: what I do for self care and what I do for recharging.
Yeah.
Um, for me, recharging is helping others. Doing stuff like this is recharging for me. Spending time with people that I care about, and That's fun for me. Dealing with complex problems, like activating the really beginning of, okay, this crazy thing's going on. How do we get through the complexity of it? The beginning of that is so much fun for me. Um, Probably more than actually solving the problem. Like just, okay, we got this knotty thing and we're getting through it and we're going to make sense of it. That gives me a lot of energy.
I love it.
So activating change and kind of working through it, I get a lot of energy out of that.
Mm.
Um, so helping others, activating change, spending time with dear friends, that feels a lot of energy for me. Things I do for self-care, I love to read. I won't tell you what books I'm reading because it's not like leadership books, but I really enjoy, I spend a lot of time reading or do a lot of sci-fi movie watching. And then I have a monthly book club with some other moms that is a lot of self-care. We get together, we try to do it religiously every month where we get together and we discuss the book for a little bit of time, but really we're just eating and chatting at each other's homes, and that's a lot of fun for me. So that's for me, that's self-care
Mm.
is my social network of deep friends that fuels me, but also gives me care. Um, and it takes a village, right, to do
Heck,
the things that we do every day.
heck, yes, it does.
Investing in ourselves and our relationships is what keeps me going.
I love that. And I have to ask, is there a favorite sci-fi movie that you've loved?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I don't think I have a favorite. They all do different things to different moments.
But sci-fi is your jam. I get it. It's your thing. It's
Sci-fi
genre.
fantasy takes me away from reality. That's
Yes.
the whole point of it. Create a whole. It always amazes me that the creativity of the writer to imagine this whole different world with multiple layers of complexity and relationships and imagery. It fascinates me that they can do it, and I'm always just so excited and thrilled to fall deeply and connect with the characters and the world and all of those pieces. So it's always a lot of fun to be part of that.
Mm. Yes, to just transporting to another world and staying away from the news for just a couple of hours. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh,
To immerse myself into that other place for a little bit.
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
my childhood. I think that's probably why I love it so much. It's just like you're like a child
Yes.
exploring something new.
Yes. I love that. It's such a good way to look at it. Renee Ross, I could literally talk to you all day. I knew you back in the day when you were Renee Brown. I feel like I've known you forever, way back in the day. Thank you so much for spending the time. I always feel like I leave a little smarter every time you and I get to talk. So thank you for the time. Yeah.
Same here. Same here. You're my shiro for sure.
Oh, thank you. Take care and be well.
Same to you. Thank you so much.